stand for office. Everything must be determined by the wishes of the people. And the requirement that has been put now, looking at the figures, means that only those who are rich will be able to stand in political office. It means that many of our people, imagine the women that are supposed to be part of the gender equality processes, how many women, marginalized people are going to be able to raise those fees? They will have to find some fund for them to stand as candidates. How many young people are able to afford those fees when we encourage people to stand for office? And so it means that the democratic processes are going to be restricted to those that have the resources. And I've read some journalists in today's Herald defending that position, saying that you cannot have a democracy without money, that you cannot be a politician without money. I think we used to hear those views in the American political discourse where those things are. And they are now being paraded here, coming from what ZEC did. Now, we know that if you want to expand the democratic space, allow everyone coming from the lowest levels of our structures in society to the highest levels to be able to participate in electoral processes. And that process would not be, if you want to pay money, for us in the NCA, our money was paid through the blood that was shed during the liberation struggle. And that is our position. We already paid heavily to be candidates in election. That's what it means. And so I'm sure our colleagues in ZEC do not understand what the liberation struggle was all about. It was to pay for some of these rights that we now enjoy. And so we believe that is very undemocratic. It will close democratic space, only limit that democratic space to the Trumps of this world. I'm sure that you see in America, if you want to stand, you first announce how much money you've raised. The media knows this. You first announce how much money you've raised, then thereafter you stand as a candidate. So Zimbabwe is first wanting to become such a situation which is, and so we condemn it. But more fundamentally, we believe that it will restrict democratic space to the two dominant political parties. Our agenda in the NCA is to expand democracy by ensuring that we have a multi-party system, truly multi-party system. So it requires participation by many political parties. I think that the ruling party, ZANU-PF, would be funded easily. They will easily get that money. They have the resources to do that. They are funded by many corrupt people in this country who fund ZANU-PF. You know that. Everyone knows that. And so just two corrupt business people would be able to fund all ZANU-PF expenses. Then our other dominant colleagues who have been in and so on, they have so many friends around the world. And I read on Twitter that in fact people say, look, we will raise it. Who raised the money for? But for the rest of us, we have read people and we don't agree, and we want to make it public that we do not agree with the perception that for us to enjoy our rights as citizens, we have to get the approval of other citizens. I have a right to stand as a presidential candidate, and I don't want to negotiate that right. No one is supposed to approve my standing. I mean, it is you either vote for me or you do not vote for me. I will campaign to be elected. But you cannot say, well, for you to enjoy that right, come to us, which is what ZEC is doing. So it's undemocratic. Then we also think that it is unconstitutional. And this one is a more fundamental point. Our constitution says that you all, as media, have access to section 67 of the constitution. It is very clear about the rights that we enjoy, political participation rights. Those rights must not be restricted unreasonably by these requirements. So we believe that what ZEC has done goes outside the constitutional parameters. Then that is an argument that we believe some people may take it to the courts, but we don't want to go to the courts at this stage. ZEC must understand the sentiment that we're expressing. We then take that point up with who is ZEC to be coming up with these? That's the question that I want to address. Who is ZEC to be making this? These decisions ought to be made in the Constitution as to who qualifies and to what extent. So our Constitution doesn't set out these amounts that have to be paid. It just talks about, certain requirements that you have to meet as a citizen, you are registered as a voter, you meet residential qualifications and so forth. Then when you go to the Electoral Act, it then provides for some nominal fees that ought to be. But what ZEC has done is quite substantial. It is substantive. It is a power that ZEC is exercising as if it were a legislative body. It doesn't have the power to do that. And that the mere fact that ZEC is allowed by the Constitution to make certain regulations regarding elections would not give ZEC such drastic powers as overnight to change our political discourse. If you want to be with me on that point and follow it closely, if we allow ZEC to have that power, then there will be no need for us to have Parliament to be with us. Because surely the regulations that ZEC has brought about are the kind of regulations that ought to be debated by the public. There was no such public debate. You know that for you to pass a law now, you get out with those public outreach programs, people express their views. In this case, no Zimbabwean was ever asked to even express a view. We didn't even know that this thing was in the pipeline. So ZEC is taking us to those years long before independence. I will remind you that there was a 1961 constitution, which is similar to what ZEC has done. They've actually taken a 1961 colonial constitution, which would pretend that blacks were allowed to vote. And then blacks were allowed to be MPs. But for you to qualify to be an MP, you had to show some property qualification. You had to own some property. And then it was known that blacks would not own that property. And this is the same thing. If you have 20,000 US dollars, I'm sure it's a property qualification. Show us that you have some property. Show us that you have some money. But we are showing them that we have already fought for these rights. And that ZEC must simply run an election. The regulations that they must pass have to do, when do they open the polling stations, what kind of ballot boxes, what are the size, what are the colors of their... Those are things for ZEC. But not for ZEC to go this far. So our blame as NCA goes straight to ZEC and exclusively to ZEC. We believe that ZEC in this case has misunderstood its powers. So it's a sign of incompetence. Do not attribute to ZEC, improper motives. No, they are genuine but mistaken. They are genuine but lost. They are genuine but incompetent. Because the extent to which these things would go would be quite excessive. So those are the points we make about that. We don't believe that this is a decision for ZEC to make. Way forward, our way forward is NCA. First, we will engage within Poland to have some collective position to ZEC. So we still believe that the Poland platform provides us an opportunity to have these things were not passed through Poland. We actually, as Poland, had 16 proposals for electoral reforms, which proposals were actually anticipating that there would be many candidates. And we believe there, as part of that, we can actually have a booklet in my ballot papers for the president. So you would say, I'm on page 300, and that's where your name is, and so on. Any Zimbabwean who wants to stand as a candidate must be allowed. The only thing we think could be discussed is that you increase the number of nominators, which is not given here as an option. Either you have money, which is a nominal or reasonable amount of money, or as an option, show us your support. Now, why should you just put one option and say that if I am able to raise a particular number of thousands of nominators, that should be enough for me to participate in an election without paying any money? So this whole requirement of money, we believe, is not meant, because even that money would not necessarily support the election. The election would go into billions to run it. So the purpose of the whole thing is just to take out people, which is what some Zimbabweans have done. So our way forward first is to engage within Poland. We do not believe that the current position is influenced by other people other than ZEC itself. And our position, as I have said, we think it's a mistaken view of ZEC, which they can easily correct, given that. So that's where we first pursue that. If that platform fails, of course, we will go to the courts as a second. But going to the court is the second option. We will seek to persuade our courts to agree that the statutory instrument and the amounts that have been prescribed by ZEC are unconstitutional. They are too excessive, they are exorbitant, they are irrational, they go outside the spirit of a multi-party democracy and so on. But I must emphasize that the court route is a second route, which will only come after we have exhausted the political route. The political route is to engage them. ZEC has already had us. We'll get in, and I've read the media throughout. I've been able to find that the majority of the political actors in and outside Poland agree that these amounts are ridiculous. We will seek to persuade them that this is not a business for ZEC. Let's get out ZEC of these things, a political policy decision for Zimbabweans to discuss. At the very least, we will encourage that there be public participation, there be public debate. And I think you will agree with me, media people and others who are listening, that look, why should such an important question be different from other questions that we are currently debating in the country? Public hearings, public debates. And then how much do you want? And I appreciate the points coming from Zimbabweans who say, look, we don't want chancers, we don't want people that are, that's what they're saying. I've heard that kind of argument being put. It's a point, but it's a mistaken point. There is no such thing as a chancer. Every Zimbabwean, once you give a person a right in the constitution, it is their decision to exercise it or not. And so that point, we accept it. What I will urge voters to do is to civil society to do civic education. We will have a booklet of a ballot. That's what we are asking. And I'll say that if you can read the Bible, I'm sure you know, people can open Exodus, go to Revelations at the back of the book, coming somewhere to Kings, and so on, going around. You can open Luke, I don't know, even cut under the Luke and so on. Saga ballot, on the ballot, change the ballot book. Wow, I can add page 411. When 411, one of vote about. Put it on this good. I mean, go and vote. It's not necessary. You go to a ballot process. And I'm sure I'm clear on that. We check out Munawaka page and we go on point book, one for a page there. Who no irritate was saying on the mother Zimbabweans who want to exercise the right. It's like someone saying, I don't want many newspapers. No more the Herald, the Standard, and so on. Standard ring it around Varuguda, Herald, Nevan, Varuguda, Mavana Ruda, now I get Herald, and things like that. But you must have my paper. I want Indonesia can take a paper wearing and Museum. And so on, get that. That attitude is very dangerous for a democratic society. Citizens must not say, we are tired. Hey, you people are wasting our time. And I don't choose no more there's a long ballot paper, but we cannot have a country where we say that we will limit. So our position is very, very, very clear on that. And I think that from that, I might want, I was advised by my office to also say that some people might want to mix. I was on in the public media very clearly saying, look, when we go to ZEC commissioners, let's not look at where they come from, which ethnic group and so on. I made it clear in that interview that we must judge ZEC commissioners on the basis of their merits. This is an example of the merits. But no debate. I tell you to but in your incompetence here, to say they don't understand what a nomination fee is all about. That a nomination fee is not about paying your way to be a candidate. A nomination fee is nominal. Let citizens exercise. Now, mama fungo ndakapedza zvekudhara zvekudemonstrata nekukandira matombo nechezvitaita kudhara tiri kuNCA tichida constitution. Muchawana futi Madhuku adzoka ikoko. Tichanotsvaga kuti ofisi yeZEC iri pari, tichanovaona ikoko kutaura navo zvakadi zvakanaka. But toda kutaura na chairperson Honorable Justice Priscilla Chigubu. We have been respected. But we are just appealing to her to be sensible. If she is finding problems with an unreasonable crop of commissioners, let her tell us. I thought she is more reasonable and more sensible as a judge. She will understand what we are talking about. And I'm making this clear. You'd understand that you cannot use this. Some of the ZEC commissioners I also know have started telling us that go around the world and see what people are doing. They are mistaken. A United States dollar amount here in this country is a different animal from the amounts that are charged. They'll go to Zambia, go to another country, they say, okay, the kwachas that are paid, they convert them to US dollars. That's a totally different economic environment. In this country, to be able to get access to 1,000 US dollars, you all know how difficult that is. So we think that the rates must remain where they are, where they were before, which is 1,000 US dollars for presidential candidates, 50 United States dollars for members of parliament, no requirement for councillors. That should remain there. What we can debate, and that's our position, let's debate increasing the number of nominators. That is how free it is. If you say to me, you want to be a presidential candidate, get 1,000 nominators from each province, I will understand that. I will understand that. And that is what we can concentrate on. And we would urge that that be the solution if they want to remove chancers, if the so-called chancers. If I get 1,000 nominators, I cease to be a chancer because I have people that are saying they want me to be a candidate. Those are the points that I wish to make, etc. And that in this case, you have seen that in the interview, we have not focused on anybody else other than ZEC. It is ZEC that is mistaken on this point. And that ZEC must take responsibility, and that ZEC must understand that we believe they do not have the powers to go that far. They must remain outside controversy. If ZEC does not agree with us and wants to persist, they would have ceased to be an independent electoral board. They would have become a political player. Because how do you go to an election with such kind of a controversy that the majority of the political players say that your decision is wrong? And that your decision is ridiculous, and you say we are right, then that once you start debating with us, if you are ZEC on that point, on a law you have made yourself, then you are a political player. It's very different from a ZEC that says, I'm implementing the law made by Parliament, go to Parliament and complain, which is what Justice Gumba used to say. I'm sure you are familiar with her interviews. She says, look, I didn't make the law, go and complain, I'm not the platform, I'm just implementing the law. Here she made the law with the commissioner. And we're saying that law is ridiculous and must end there. Those would be my presentation on behalf of the NCA.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. You saw that he was addressing you so eloquently and not reading from anyone. So there's no justification for Zimbabweans to elect people who address as if they are reciting poems and say there are no presidential candidates who are capable to do it. So thanks for that address. We will now take questions. If you have got a question, you raise your hand, you identify yourself, like your name, the media house that you are coming from, then you ask your question. We can take about 3 or 4 questions at a time. Those who have questions, you can raise your hands then. Yes, I see that hand there. Probably can ask you a question while your colleagues think about questions to ask.
My name is Bruce. I represent the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation. Professor Madhuku, maybe I just want you to bring me into context in terms of the obtaining situation in other countries. How much do they charge? You mentioned that they are a different environment from Zimbabwe. I just want to have just that appreciation. How much is charged for nomination?
In all the countries that we know, they charge a nominal fee, not the exorbitant fee that you have got currently. I have not been able to look at that. Recently, I think on Friday I did. My brother asked him to go through. We were able to find that the closest you could get to what we got was Zambia, but only in relation to the candidates for parliament and so forth. There is no country that is that similar amount you have for the presidential candidates. All right. In other words, it's very difficult with a different economy. A United States dollar in Zimbabwe is a different thing from any other country, because if we use United States dollars here and the way we earn them, it's much more expensive than you get. You go to Kenya and then say how many shillings do they pay as nomination fees, then you do a conversion to United States dollar. That's misleading from an economic point. Am I answering your question? I'm not an economic expert myself, but that if you go to an economy other than our economy and start doing the conversions, you will be mistaken. It's much more difficult in this country for a political party to raise 500,000 United States dollars. I mean, which party will be able to do that outside ZANU-PF and the main opposition party that is funded from many Western friends? It's not going to be possible. We know this. Your room does not pass because look, everyone knows that it will be impossible for a political party outside ZANU-PF and the dominant opposition and the major opposition party. $500,000 and NCA won't be able to. You need to doubt a candidate to be president. Party yangu dausa some candidates, power MPs. Party yangu dausa candidates, power councillor and so on. Atina mari, tirima Zimbabweans, to participate in election. It's our constitutional right. But atina chi mari. And aguna muna ane simba, sera oya ne ZEC, rungo muga ne usiku wote ataku badala 20,000. This is $2. Because look, it's clear, it's wrong. That's what I'm saying. ZBC, I've answered Nanchiti and now we are a professor. I'm coming here as the leader of the NCA. But certainly I can do your research. I told you, I asked my brother Clarence Damona Takafamba Testikamut, I check Achita go through get a lot of things. I asked for press conference, I am somewhere. But Takato Tarisa when I was, and then we saw my figures, not the closest you could get to this madness was somewhat what happened in Zambia, but not Kuma presidential. But if as a professor I can go and find that, but it's irrelevant. Atina mariachi as NCA. Saka zvabasa kuti mamwe party kune dzimwe nyika vane mari. Handizvotaura kuti kana vaine mari kuZambia maopposition vaine mari kuKenya ngavaiti isu hatina mari but toda kuparticipate muelection sekuparticipate kwatanga tichita makore ese. Is that clear? No, why we are here. We don't want what they want to do. Hatisukuda toda kuparticipate and we have our country to live in. Ndamukupa example ya First Republic anda Mugabe. Waingomuka ongoenda unoita election yako, wangomuka waita election yako. Izvana ED zvakashata. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, I can see that that hand raised there. You can ask again, go ahead.
Sure. Efatum Secure SABC. From what you've submitted, I take it you are not challenging the requirement for a nomination fee. You are challenging the figures that have been announced. As a political player, who should determine the figure and what is a reasonable figure when it comes to such requirements?
Okay, thank you very much. We are challenging the concept that has been brought by ZEC, which is to move beyond a nominal fee to actually a payment for you, a charge. That's different. What we had all along is a nominal fee, which is like a birth certificate. You don't go and buy a birth certificate. That's what I said. You don't go and buy a national ID. You go and obtain a birth certificate, you obtain a national ID, and just administratively we charge you a nominal fee, which has nothing to do with what goes into producing that thing. That's what should happen, which is different from a passport. I think sometimes with a passport we actually measure it. Now with nomination for elections, it must be nominal fee. So we are challenging the movement from a nominal fee to a charge. I don't know whether I'm getting complicated for you. So it's not just the amount, it is the concept. ZEC has changed the concept from a nominal fee to a charge. We are opposed to that. Then when it comes to the nominal fee, we believe that must be by Parliament. I've answered you well, Andrew. It must be by Parliament. Parliament must determine the nominal fee. If it goes through the minister or whoever, it must be, because the Constitution is very clear that for you to qualify to be a candidate or for you to vote, you have to be a citizen, you are registered to vote, and you're a particular age. And then you reside, some residential qualification. That's all we want. What ZEC has brought changes our understanding. And then we don't even have enough time. If this thing had been brought to Parliament, parliamentarians would have been in a better position to appreciate that it's too late. We only have less than 12 months to the general election. It's too late for political players to raise that amount of money. If ZEC had wanted that, they should have announced that 5 years ago. Give us 5 years to raise that money. And I think I'm making my points clear. We let Zimbabweans debate it. ZEC is not a political player. It must get out of political decision making. Let's leave those things to parliamentarians and other politicians to make. It's a very serious decision. If you go by the way Zimbabweans are debating it on Twitter, social media, everywhere. And there are Zimbabweans who are welcoming it. And they are entitled to do that. And there are Zimbabweans who are madly against it. These are political issues. Who should stand as a candidate? And ZEC has misunderstood this wrong. Parliament must do it. Let the politicians debate it. And our solution, as I've said, we engage through Pollard and so on. We do that and still try and see and understand it. There are other political players very busy, happy about it, especially the dominant political parties. No, I hope we take competitors out and so on through Nyaemari. No, take competitors out by engaging the voter, not Hanamari. Because today you might be lucky to have people who fund you, but the next day you might not have them. So you can't say that because I will give a call. Sorry, let me wrap up. The one question.
Okay, I will take the last round of questions. I see this hand raised here. Any other question? So we'll take your question then.
Okay, my name is Lovemore Madhuku. Professor Madhuku, my question initially was based on some people, some parties, or even some political analysts were sort of for the idea. But now that this is here, is it not time to go back maybe to allowing political parties to be funded maybe by other people from outside, seeing that most of the guys who want to take part will not be able to raise around $500,000 to nominate the candidates?
Well, I mean, which is where the problem is. It would be very wrong to have our political system determined by those who fund. In other words, we do not want a political system that is driven by funders. I think that we are not in a good position. The Americans have told you, you first announce how much money you have raised to get into politics. And those political commentators you're talking about and others, they were all telling us that it's a good thing, it will eliminate the point that I attacked earlier on. That's don't be irritated by the exercise of political rights. Because once we create an intolerant society like that, you'll then get irritated by other things that matter. You get irritated by people who are demonstrating, you get irritated by people who are choosing different religious beliefs, you get irritated by everything else. So it's not time to open up. I think that they should simply remove the funding component. At the same time, as you see, you will tempt people to go all sorts of ways to get funders. You get one person giving a political party money, and then they dictate the pace, the whole reason why it's immoral to ask people to be funded by other players. That's what we think is wrong. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You still have another. Okay, I will take that. The very last question. When we finish the press briefing, the president will also just be here for a while for those who want to conduct short interviews and any other burning question that may come up. So I would take that as the last question.
My name is Chenisani. Professor Madhuku, you intimated on the possibility of court action. Was that a threat or you mean it?
It's not a threat. It's not a threat. We have told you that we don't like these new nomination fees. We don't like them. We are opposed to them. And the way out is very clear. First, we engage those who have put them in place because they have the power to remove them. They have the power to lower them. They have the power to go back to nominal fees. So we'll engage that. If that fails, we won't sleep. We'll use another avenue. The next avenue would be to go to court, which we don't know what the courts will say, but we are convinced that any reasonable court will agree that the amounts are so excessive as to undermine the constitutional rights. So it's not going to court is never a threat. It's a reality, and that's for us. But I know that there are other citizens already who are planning to go to court, who have already approached the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, who have been advised that that has happened. And you know that going to court over this matter doesn't require the millions of Zimbabweans. One individual, one Zimbabwean, I think everyone now knows that. One Zimbabwean is enough under our democracy to go to the courts and say that this is unconstitutional. I think that as we pursue the political route, it's very likely that already other Zimbabweans would have gone to court. So for us as NCA, because we're a political party, we just think that other political players will agree with this. We also think that ZEC would be open to dialogue. ZEC is not another political party. It is supposed to be a professional body that ought to be listening.
Yeah, okay. We're saying that we will take.
I can do it now. We don't need issues. All right. Isu sesangano re NCA tiri kurambirana ne nyaya yakaunzwa nevanhu veZEC yekuti tinenge taakubhadhara mari dzakawandisa kuti uite presidential candidate, uite MP, uite councillor. Presidential candidate anofanira kubhadhara $20,000 United States dollars, ma-MPs 1,000. Mari iyoyo yakawandisa uye hazvina musoro zvirikwa neZEC izvozvo izvi. Tiri kuzvirambirazve pakuti ZEC haina simba rairi kufunga kuti inaro yekuti ita kubvisa mari tinofunga kuti hazvibvumidzwi nebumbiro remutemo riripo. Asi chikuru ndechekuti izvi zvavari kuita izvi hazvibatsiri kufamba kushanda kwenyika. Tochete zvandingataura.
Tingati ndiapi matanho muchatora kana matadza kana kuti kana ZEC ikasashandira zvavari kuita izvi?
Danho rekutanga tichanda nekuZEC, tichataura nevamwe ma-political parties. Isusu tiri kuPollard se-NCA, saka tichataura nevamwe vari kuPollard vatiri kuziva kuti vari kutaura izvozvo. Iko kuPollard tine ZANU-PF, saka tichatonzwawo ZANU-PF haisati yataura panyaya iyi, ndofunga vachanzwisa izvozvo. Totaurira veZEC kuti hatisi kuzvifarira. Zvikaramba izvozvo izvo tichaenda kumatare. Tichifunga kuti dare redu reConstitutional Court richanzwisa kuti zvaitwa neZEC izvi zviri kunze kwebumbiro remutemo.
Vamwe vari kuti imimi hamuna vanhu muri kutambisa nguva yavo, saka hazvinei nawo kuti muchema nenyaya dzemari mungati chii kune vanhu?
Kune vanhu ivovo tovataura ini nditori munhu pachezvangu panapa. Ndakatokwana kuti ndiende nekodzero idzodzo.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. We get to the end of our press briefing.